we have the pleasure of hearing from Paul Sauter, who does work with horses on a genetic area. He does gene stuff and evaluations. We're gonna hear all about it. I really like your shirt, by the way, Paul. You're looking good. Paul Sauter.
Thank you. Not my first rodeo. So I was here, I presented in June. Yeah, that's funny, huh? I presented in June and you get a reminder from the Kaufman Foundation to do a 6-month reboot. So I'll tell you what's happened. I'll emphasize things that have happened in the past 6 months, but it's also a generalized presentation because I see some new faces here. So let's go full screen. There we go. I'm Paul Sauter, founder and chief scientific officer of Equiseq. Equiseq is an equine services company for people who want better horses. So Equiseq's DNA test is a genetic screen for that identifies horses who are at risk for a muscle disease before they develop symptoms. And unlike muscle biopsy, Equiseq's DNA test is non-invasive. We just need a hair sample. So that's who we are and what we do, but what does it mean? This is Christine and her horse Carlo. And this picture was taken when Carlo won Supreme Young Stock Champion, that is best young horse in the show, at the big county show in Essex. And you can see Christine is just beaming at this brilliant start to Carlo's career. But it was not to be. This was Carlo's last show. Shortly after this show, he started to develop symptoms of lameness and muscle wasting. And Christine consulted with her veterinarians, went through a whole bunch of diagnostic tests with no answer. She purchased the Equiseq DNA test from our licensee, Generatio in Germany. And her horse tested positive, having one copy of the variant we call P4. Carlo's condition continued to worsen. And Christine posted a video of Carlo in the end stages. I'm not going to show the video, but I'll show you some frame grabs. Carlo in the end is not able to stand. He tries to eat out of this bucket, collapses, gets back on his feet again, collapses again and again over and over. And Christine, in consultation with her veterinarian, decided it was time. And Carlo was euthanized at 5 years old. He had a half sibling, also euthanized at the same age with similar symptoms. At the end of the video, Christine reaches out to breeders and says, please, please test your horses before breeding. Because it's a substantial emotional and financial burden to horse owners to have this happen to them. And I think of Christine and people like her every day, and that's what keeps us moving the company forward. So I'm going to give you 3 lessons here. 1 lesson on history, 1 lesson on science, and 1 lesson on economics. Here's the history. This is my origin story. Along the top, there's some years that are of interest in my career. So I got my PhD in genetics in 1980. I worked as a Drosophila geneticist through a series of academic appointments. In 2000, I went through a career transition to mammalian genomics and bioinformatics. I moved to the Jackson Laboratory to be part of a mouse database and worked there for 11 years. Then came to New Mexico, had a position at UNM for a couple of years, entered the private sector and founded Equiseq in 2015. Now, that timeline only makes sense when you look at a couple other things that happened in genetics during that time. In the early 1990s, we began the Human Genome Project, the project to sequence the entire genome of the humans, which was deemed impossible, crazy, all that stuff at the time. 10 years later, it was done. If at the time of the completion of the Human Genome Project, you said, hey, I'm fabulously wealthy, I'd like to be sequenced, it would have cost you $100 million. 12 years later, in 2014, you could get your genome sequenced for $1,000. So that's 5 orders of magnitude in 12 years. That created a lot of opportunities, including the opportunity to found a horse genetic testing company. All right, here's a science lesson. All living things are related. They're descended from a single common ancestor, and they use the same means of encoding genetic information. And one way of looking at living things is how long it's been since their last common ancestor. So I'm showing you distance from human, for mouse, horse, and zebrafish. And all of those species have muscles. If you look at muscles from any of those species, unless you're a real specialist, you'd have a hard time telling what species it came from. So all of the muscle proteins are easily identified across all of those species. And it means that information from humans, mice, and even zebrafish can inform our work on horse. Here's another piece of science. I took all the science out of the talk. The poster's on the back wall. You can talk to me afterwards to talk about science. Okay, here's the economics lesson. Good, right? And who wants to hear that stuff? Is that going to be on the test? No, right? All right. Here's an economics lesson. For any startup, there are three forces that converge to create the opportunity: technology, society, and finance. So in technology, I told you there's been a revolution in genetics. There's massive amounts of information available publicly. Anybody, anywhere in the world can access it. You can make discoveries on a laptop in a Starbucks in Thailand, right? So that's the technology change. Society has changed with respect to horse ownership. It used to be, if a horse couldn't do the task for which it was acquired, they got rid of it one way or another. And we've moved over the past few decades into an era of the forever horse. People have a commitment to their horse. They're going to keep it for the lifetime of the horse, even if it can't be ridden or worked. And they'll pay the expensive vet bills to keep it going. So there's a group of people who have a strong interest in having healthy horses for as long as they can be healthy. And those are our customers. And in finance, it's actually, ironically, the lack of funding that has made this an opportunity. So there's essentially no federal funding for research on horse, and this kind of makes sense because you don't want your tax dollars spent to subsidize the sport of kings, right? So you can count the number of academic horse researchers on your fingers, and that lack of funding creates an opportunity for a startup. So a small company could really move the needle in this field, whereas in human genetics, that's really not possible. There's one more thing I want to mention about the opportunity specifically in horse, and that is that genetic testing of non-human animals is not regulated. Let me say that again. Genetic testing of non-human animals is not regulated. That means we can take our test directly from the lab bench to the market without going through any regulatory review. And that turns out to be really important. So how are we doing? This is an update on our progress. There's three big things that we try to do. Patents are really essential. So we have these genetic tests, we have filed patents on them. And in the past 6 months, we've filed 2 patents. And in the past 6 months, one of them has been issued in 23 countries. So we have patent protection, in 23 countries. And those countries may end up, we have one licensee in Germany. We may end up getting additional licensees. And that's really great because we don't have to do any work. We just go pick up the checks and we're on the golf course at 3. So research, I don't play golf, that was a joke. The next step in research is peer-reviewed publications. And I know a lot of you think, oh, that's something that academics are concerned about. No, that's a marketing tool. We can't get veterinarians to adopt our test widely without peer-reviewed publications. So if you want to talk about our progress to that, there's the poster at the back. There's a lot of science involved. Okay, marketing. We're real amateurs at marketing. We've made a few fumbling attempts and we're learning. It's a pleasure to acknowledge our team. So I have a fantastic board of directors. They have a diverse array of skills and they've been very patient with me. In the past 6 months, we've added Jesse Young, who is a medical director of Tricor, as a member of our board. And we've also added David Naneman as part of our scientific advisory board. So he is with Rosetta Design Group, and that's a whole other story. I can talk for 6 minutes about that. It's also a pleasure to thank members of the community who've been helpful to us. I always stand up here every week and say, you can reach out to members of this community and they're very helpful. And that's certainly been true in our case. And we'd like to thank all those people and, all the accelerators and those kind of guys that have helped us along the way. Here's our ask. This is really specific. We need people with horse industry experience. So could be a large scale breeder, could be a veterinarian, could be someone with a leadership position in a breed organization. So we have a nice array of skills on our current board, but we're like, we don't know how to talk to horse people. None of us are horse people. And we need some people who are in the industry, who know how to talk to horse people, who can stand next to us, when we're at events, so we don't look like total aliens. So that's my ask from this community. If you know anybody who knows anything about horses, we'd be happy to have an initial conversation. I think the ideal candidate is going to end up on our board. So where are we here? I've told you how the revolution in genomics has made it possible for us to approach horse genetics in a new way. I've also told you that we can take our test directly from the lab bench to the market because genetic testing of non-human animals is non-regulated. Told you about an important milestone we made. Our first patent's been issued in 23 countries. Peer-reviewed publications are on the way. Talk to me at my poster. We're making some first attempts at marketing. I'm sure we could use help from the community on that. And we have a really specific ask that we'd like people that have experience in the horse industry to talk to us and possibly join our team. So we're Equiseq, the future of horses.
And so what's up next? For those of you who are new, ask Paul questions. Maybe you've got some ideas for him. So form a line over here and come on up and ask him questions. And if he gets too scientific,
That's for the poster.
that's for the poster. We'll say, go to the poster. All right, go for it.
I've gotten some great questions here.
Paul, nice job. Brian Steiner. I own Noventum Custom Software. We rebuilt all of Paul's software infrastructure over about an 18-month period. So Paul, just cut me off if I'm asking anything that's too personal based on confidential information. I really liked your slide of technology, IP, and then I would actually even just say sales, right? And as someone that has direct access to your PayPal account because of the software integration and quarterly financial statements.
You and Elon Musk.
Yes. It's just, it's interesting because depending on your focus, like I see movement in one of those three areas at a time.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm really focused on technology. We got the zebrafish study. We're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this. Hey, I'm really focused on patents. We're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this. We got this patent issue. I'm focused on sales. I'm talking to the vets. I'm talking to these breed organizations. And like, I can see like the impact. So how do you decide like which of those three to focus on in the short term? Because like in the short term, they're different. And like, the idea is that they'll all converge eventually,
Yes.
but like not right away.
Right.
So how do you decide that?
So operating a startup, and everyone's in a startup, raise your hand. Yeah. Operating a startup is like flying some kind of complicated spaceship or something. And there's an instrument panel, and some of the lights are green, not too many. Some lights are yellow, yeah, who cares? Some of the lights are red, yeah, there's some of that. And some are red and flashing with the buzzer, right? Those are the things we do, right? And, I wish I could say I was actually executing a strategy. We do have a long-term strategy. The patents are extremely important. The company's not worth anything unless we own our IP. We're trying to get acquired, as you know, right? So that's very important. Over the past 2 years, the patent development has consumed all the funding and the research has basically gone to zero. And we're talking to people, talking to collaborators and setting up future research, but the cost of developing these patents are outrageous, but it has to be borne because it's the thing that creates value in the company. So the simple answer to your question is I don't plan anything. I open up the laptop and I say, damage report and, crisis center. And that's the thing we do, right? And so, and in software development, you've noticed every once in a while, like I having a big idea and you get a PDF and it's, you're like, wow, decaf for you from now on, right? And it's because like one of the other fires went out and we have to take care of the website stuff. So I wish there was a better answer to you, but I thought I'd just be honest.
Thank you.
Hello, Miriam Ortiz-Pino with More Than Organized. Building on what Brian just said, and being someone that knows about productivity, sequential focus is great, but not when it's only the urgent stuff. So we may need to work on finding a couple hours a week to at least look at other things. So that wasn't even my question. What I noticed over the years is you started out with mostly thoroughbreds and racehorses, and now I see lots more pictures of quarter horses and other breeds. Is this something that's now across breeds? Has it infiltrated?
Yes. And so the emphasis on quarter horses is for a very specific strategic goal. Quarter horses are the largest population of a specific breed in the United States. There's about 3 million quarter horses in the United States out of maybe 7 million horses. Their breed organization was the first to require genetic testing for a set of conditions. quarter horse people understand that genetic testing of horses is important to ensure good health. Our tests are not in their panel yet. If we were to be required by the American Quarter Horse Association, revenue to top line revenue would be about 20 million a year. And for a company with one unpaid guy opening the mail, that's not bad. Okay, so there's plenty of junk in quarter horses, and because, well, I won't go into it because it's sciencey, but that is the big target right now. And thoroughbred people have a lot of money, and so they think they don't need to learn anything from other people.
Right.
So they're harder to approach.
Follow up. A few months ago, I shared with you that Katie Benz, like, we need to follow up more with that because now she's working in conjunction with the University of Tennessee and Dr. Orsini. Are you familiar with Dr. Orsini? She runs the lab for rehabbing horses,
Oh.
so it might be a great connection for you, so we'll follow up.
Yes. Yeah, anybody with a horse connection, even a tenuous one, like, okay, if nothing happens, nothing happens, but they can't say yes unless you ask. So just let me know.
Hello, my name's Anna. I'm an international marketeer and a copywriter here in Albuquerque. My question for you is, it sounds like marketing is a bit of a gray area at the moment. What has been successful for you so far? And then what challenges and learnings have you taken already?
Okay, well, marketing, the one thing that has been successful was kind of driven by necessity. So there aren't laboratory horses. Sorry if that's news to anybody. But like in order to get horses for our studies, we have to recruit people who have horses who are willing to participate in the studies, right? So one of the first things we did was get on Facebook, and there's a forum for people whose horses have this muscle disorder. So that's where we recruited all of our people for studies. They got a lot of free testing. And that's where a lot of people go now. They report out the results and they say, what do I do about this? A lot of people are good about nutrition and management, and I don't have any practical experience with that. So right now, I'd say Facebook word of mouth is the primary means by which people are coming in. We've started to do standard stuff. So we sent out little thank you cards that had discounts and stuff like that. Our board is meeting next week in an open-ended jam session to look at marketing possibilities. We have a report from the American Horse Council about the state of the horse industry in the United States, so we can look at that for numbers. And really, almost anything we did for marketing would be an improvement over our baseline of basically nothing, and word of mouth and a few thank you cards. So yeah, we are ripe for help with marketing. And the reason we're slow on that is not because we're stupid and lazy, but because we don't feel like we can put a lot of resources into marketing until we give the marketing people the ammunition that they need. The ammunition that they need is peer-reviewed publications. Patent issuance, there's a scientific review, but nobody understands that there is. The only thing that veterinarians understand is peer-reviewed scientific articles. So when our first one comes out, that's when we can put some real marketing muscle and dollars behind it. But until then, I feel like we're just exploring and we're sending marketing people out with no ammunition, and I don't want to do that.
I was gonna say, I think something to explore, especially like in an international realm, is especially you're already at a good start with Facebook, but there's a lot of ways to around the world get data specifically for veterinarians. I think would be very helpful. We used to do B2B marketing, and on LinkedIn, you could find someone within a specific country who has a specific job title with a specific specialty. So in your case, horses.
Right.
And you can actually target those people. And when your peer-reviewed article comes out, you can start popping up on their feeds, and that can start connecting to your website and stuff like that. So something to think about.
So that reminds me of one of my minor asks for the community. I have some skills that need improvement. LinkedIn is one of those. I'm terrible at LinkedIn, and I understand there are people who know how to make it sing and dance. So it would be great if we had like a session here on how to make LinkedIn sing and dance, right? Maybe one of those lunch and learn things. Yes. So we'll do that.
Yeah.
And, I also need help with green screen in Final Cut Pro, but, that's a so, one of the nice things about adding Jesse Young to our panel is, so they do diagnostic tests at Tricor, and they're part of a network of groups that do diagnostic tests. So I had no access to those people before, but they meet all the time, and they say, what's going on in diagnostic testing, and that includes animal diagnostic testing. So that's a really attractive thing that's going to be coming up, and we're jamming next week on marketing things. So we'll get somewhere, but slowly.
It's a journey. Thank you.
Yeah.
Actually, 1 second. We've got a couple online. Phil, you want to unmute? Yeah, hi, Paul.
Hey,
Executive outcomes, we identify challenges and opportunities, avoiding disruption for people's products and services. So, a couple of questions are kind of a couple of questions that you've already had have been tapering on where I am. You've had this patent for how long now?
the patent was filed in 2017 and the issuance started, the first one was in August and then there was a cluster of them. So less than 6 months.
August of last year.
Yeah,
Okay. From what I understand, when I was with you and talking to you, you have a unique patent and you have something that's of great value, obviously, for somebody who owns horses. Have you really identified the value, the real value propositions of your product? And do you know how to market those? And I think the second part where I'm asking, do you think you know how to market those? You don't quite know that at the moment, especially if you're asking for LinkedIn. But one of the things, for example, on LinkedIn is even if you have a basic LinkedIn page, you can write newsletters. Okay, so you can write a newsletter and put that in LinkedIn, and then you'll be able to join. You'll be able to look up all the different groups in LinkedIn that are involved with horses, and you can automatically distribute that newsletter within those groups. And that would be a good way for you to get out. But I understand what you have and what you say you have, but is the real value of what you have being identified for the horse owners? And the second part is, once you've done that, how do you get it out to them? So how do you do the first part?
okay, sure. So we do understand what the value is to horse owners, and that's because we've done an analysis of our customers. So almost all of our customers are horse owners and horse buyers, and they're using the test for a pre-purchase exam, because if they've ever had a horse with this condition, they never want to have another one like that. And so they are very interested in using the test for a pre-purchase exam. The breeders, on the other hand, I've had breeders say to my face, once we sell a horse, it's not my problem, right? So the breeders are under financial pressure. They want to turn as much money as possible, and they are against testing until there's enough pressure from buyers or a breed organization requires them to test, and then they will grudgingly do so. We have a few breeders who've decided to get ahead of the curve, and they've tested all their stock and they've taken the hits necessary to produce a herd that produces clean horses. But that's a way off, and you can understand that the horse industry is conservative. When we started this, I had an idealistic scientist view, and the status quo fights back is what I've learned. And people will do anything to defend their economic interest, and that includes being untruthful, which is not a behavior that a scientist expects. So, that's the short answer. There is a conflict within the horse industry between different groups of people, as we've discussed before. So there's the horse buyers, there's the breeders, there's the vets, and the breed organizations, and they all have different priorities. So if we win over the vets with peer-reviewed publications, we can win over the breed organizations. Maybe we could require the breeders to do testing, and everyone in the long term would benefit. The goal is to breed out these defects over time because horses are bred deliberately. But the level of resistance from the status quo is a lot higher than I thought it would be.
Yeah, so I see two key value points you brought up there. The first one being that you can prevent the disease, and that's an important factor that you should promote. The first one is that you can prevent. You can go back to before the buying stage. Your target market people has to be not just people that have horses, so they can find out if there's a problem, but people who don't have horses.
Right.
They're the ones that you need to go to. That's two newsletters you can do to two different groups of people, and you can find. I'm sure you can find many people that are involved with horses on LinkedIn somewhere, and you can just post into those groups free.
Yep. So I'll add one more thing, and that is on international sales. Because of the patents now, it would be possible for us to get patent licensees in places that are far removed from the testing facility in the United States or Germany, for example, Australia and New Zealand. So we have patents there, and there are genetic testing providers there. Typically, people don't file patents in Australia because they figure how big that is, but we did. And so, you know, the Australian company has operated by infringing other people's patents because it's not infringing because it's not covered in Australia. But to be able to process the samples locally would take a 2 or 3 week delay out of the process, and it would mean they could be used for pre-purchase exams. So now that we've got the patents issued, I think we're going to look for more international partners because that's a real advantage for horse owners to get the results back quickly.
Okay, cool.
If I may introduce myself, my name is Michael Herrick, and I'm with HIPAA for Humans. I'm also the CTO of ManyCheck. So I'm a CTO, you're in a technology company. It's nice to be reminded sometimes that technology is more than just fiddling around on a keyboard. Sometimes there's physical reality behind the technology. What I've always loved about your story is that you're not, or you weren't, a horse guy.
No.
I always assumed that, you know, when I first met you, it made sense. I'm like, oh, he's a horse guy. So he started a horse business, do horse stuff. Not what happened. You came at it from the technology, from the science side of things. And I think, and you've really brought it down to earth, because I think that a problem a lot of companies have that I've faced myself is that when you're in technology, or I suppose any type of expertise, you see how it can be applied everywhere. I'm a computer programmer. I can write software. Who do you write software for? Anybody who needs software. I'm an accountant. Who do you do accounting for? Anybody who needs to file their taxes. And you have like you're like in the ultimate technology, the technology of all of life. So you could have gone after all of life. You could have gone after anything, right? So it's just fascinating to me that you drilled down on horse. You told us a little bit about what were some of the factors. I'm wondering if there are other pressures, or there are other things that were interesting and attractive, and are there distractions now that are tempting you away from that focus? Do you have those nights where you say, gee, horse is hard. What if I did this for?
Yeah, so I'll tell you exactly how we did that. We did it rationally. Anybody ever see the book Game Storming? Raise your hand. Man, get the book, really. It's a book on, you know, tried true methods for solving open-ended problems sort of in parallel. So everyone speaks at the same time instead of like going around the room and everyone talking until they pass out, right? So we had a set of ideation sessions to look for an opportunity in genomics, and we wanted no regulation, so everything human was off the table. We wanted a niche market that was small enough so the big guys wouldn't get interested, so that, you know, it couldn't be cattle or chicken, right? And we wanted some kind of social barrier to entry that a small company would tolerate, but big guys would not. And to my great surprise, over 4 sessions, we identified horse as the opportunity. So there is no regulation, as I've explained. It is a niche market. And people like, what do people need horses for? And there's no federal funding. So all those things make it attractive. And then the social barrier to entry, yeah, horse people are challenging to deal with as a science company. And, but I have to look at the positive side to that. The great thing about doing this is it's every scientist's dream. You know everything you know right now, and you're thrown 20 years into the past. So the path forward is absolutely clear, right? So why did we choose horse instead of something else? And what else did we consider? We looked at other opportunities in agriculture, and I thought the agricultural microbiome might be a useful thing. Boy, I can tell you a story about that, but talk to me at the poster. And other companies are taking advantage of that opportunity now. As for other animals, no. And then for plants, I briefly had a fantasy. I don't know anything about plants, but I briefly had this fantasy that we could make novelty plants like petunias that glow in the dark, for example. And someone has done that. So it's not a bad idea. And they have a viable company. So we also looked at possibly doing genomics for the military, which is the largest consumer of genomic data in the country. But then that gets into all kinds of complications. We would have been able to predict propensity to PTSD, for example. And that gets into all kind of turf that we don't want to get into. So it was just easy, make discoveries, go straight to market. And horses are mammals. It's all the same genes. So mice, humans, horses, same thing. So that's why horse. I didn't know anything about horse. It's really obvious when I show up at a horse site but the horses love me, but they know I'm not charged.
What about distractions, temptations? Is
No,
there temptation
no,
to
no,
take
no.
this
Like the instrument
technology?
panel with the buzzing and the red, that's the thing that gets the interest.
Actually, hang on one second. Sue, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
A member of our
Sure.
board.
Hi, Paul. It's amazing. Every time I hear you present on Equiseq, I learned something new. And so I've been taking notes, by the way, for our ideation meeting next week. Because I think people in the audience had some really incredible questions and possible solutions. My question to you is where they were talking about quarter horses. How do you best see moving forward in that arena? Pun intended.
Right. Well, the report that I emailed you this morning from the American Horse Council shows you where the horses are by breed in the United States. And quarter horses, Texas has more quarter horses than anybody. So it seems pretty easy to hook up with a breeding operation or people in the AQHA in Texas by just doing FaceTime, doing like Million Cups, except hanging around horse people. So I just have to, like hang around with them and see how they move. There are a lot of facilities that would benefit from us that I don't have any contact with because they're quiet about it. So for example, horse cloning, everyone know about horse cloning? The horses are being cloned left and right. So in Argentina, there's the guy had the perfect polo pony. So now there's 17 of them. And when one of them gets tired, he just gets on another one and it's the same horse. So there's a lot of horse cloning going around. That's pretty expensive. And you'd figure, people could do a $300 test before they clone a horse. Same thing with embryo transfer to surrogate mares. So there's some big industrial scale production of quarter horses that are high end that I would love to get into because the cost of a $300 test on top of $150,000 quarter horse embryo is nothing, right? So I would like to integrate with those folks, but I am sure we'll have a lot to talk about next week, including ideas from this group. So thanks.
Thanks.
Hi there, my name is Susie Hunt, and when you talked about the book Game Storming, you were speaking my language because I run a learning strategy consultancy called Teach Your Thing. But my question has to do with us as we're networking and thinking of people. You were asking for people to join your team, and I wanted to hear more about what that means. So, for example, just as I'm brainstorming, I know someone who works full-time, she owns a horse, probably is not in the horse industry, but she works at Boston Scientific. She's not local, for example. Probably people in the room may know someone from Corrales who's retired. So I just wanted to hear more about what it means to be on your team. Is it a job? Is it a full-time thing? Is it, you mentioned a board, so maybe, and what are the time requirements? What type of person are you looking for?
So for the regular horse folks that just have, horses, we just like to have conversations, right? Because we're not just selling our tests. We're learning, when you're talking face to face to a horse person, what's your day like? What's the worst stuff that happens to you? What's the thing you wish you didn't have to do? I'm learning all this from Barb too, by the way. Right? Like what are your pain points, right? And they'll tell you all that stuff. And that's really informative. So if you want to know how to reach those people, you have to know what's on fire on their Instagram panel, right? And now, like if somebody who's on the board of the AQHA says, I'm really interested in your company, let's talk to you about marketing. I run a horse company. I sell things to horse people. After a couple of conversations, we'd love to have that kind of person on our board to talk to us about marketing. And the board meets once every couple of months by Zoom. We have formal meetings, minutes, all that kind of stuff. Sometimes there's email votes. The thing we're doing next month is special just because we have we have new people in our team and a lot of new opportunities. So they aren't jobs in the sense that people get paychecks, but people get equity compensation, right? And so, if you believe in the future of the company and you think we can get the golden ticket, it's not bad getting paid there. Hi.
You answered a lot of the questions I had already. So cost of less than $300, and then it takes about 3 weeks because you have to send out the test.
If it's international, we can do it in 5 days in this country.
Okay. Oh, okay. So you can do it here in this country.
Yeah.
And then, you kind of talked about raising awareness with the breeders and trying to breed this disease out. Like that's a
Mhm.
beautiful goal. And then, you know, a lot of people will purchase this test upon, you know, looking for a horse so that they buy a horse that does not have that. If people purchase it after they already have a horse and the test comes back positive, is there or is it kind of just, it allows them that time to grieve what they know is gonna happen?
So the deep answer to your question is, you know, some of the horse genes are identified because they are human disease gene that cause muscle diseases, right? So there's no question about what the outcome is. Is there any treatment or cure? No, not for the human patients. So basically they give them a teddy bear and they say it's going to take you a long time to die and it's going to hurt. And that's it. And for horse, the course of the disease is different in the sense that when people lose ambulation, they can keep them alive indefinitely. In wheelchairs, what kills people is respiratory suppression because the diaphragm is skeletal muscle. And they have nocturnal respiratory insufficiency and they can prolong lives by ventilation support at night, but you're not going to do that on a horse. So once a horse can't stand anymore, most people say that's it. And as for future therapies, for humans, gene therapy is making enormous strides. These are extremely rare diseases in people. In horses, they're common because people breed horses who can't multiply fractions and don't believe in mentalism. So it's fairly common. And horses are euthanized, but you can provide a diet and exercise plan that prolongs the horse's life and improves its quality of life. But the outcome is not going to change until it substantially changes in people. And even when we have gene therapy in people for these things, you're not going to do that for a horse that was bought for $1,000 at a claiming price.
Yeah, so I think it's beneficial regardless, because at least it gives people that peace of mind of understanding what's happening, and then they can begin that grieving process before it happens. My other question is, have you thought about taking it to the universities like NMSU? You know, because they do a lot of that down there.
Yeah, so I've been through the Arrowhead's accelerator, one of their scale-up sprints, and I'm in contact with Arrowhead, and they say they're going to put me in touch with the person who can put me in touch with all the county extension agents and all the vets and all that stuff. They have our send ahead deck as an introduction, but you know, if their inbox looks like mine, it's not a top priority for them right now. So we're just going to give it some time until one of those warm introductions works out.
Good luck.
But to Chadwick Comunicaciones Cocopelli, nice shirt. Oh dear. So do you not ride at all?
No, the last time I rode a horse was, I don't know, 35 years ago. But I like to pet them, though. They like me.
Is there a reason?
It's just not my thing, you know, it's like, you know, they're mammals, you know, I mean, I suppose I could go out, you know, go on one of those, you know, get on some trail horse that's not going to go off the trail or gallop or anything, sit on it, have somebody take expensive pictures of me. And every horse person who looks at that says, you have no business. It's going to look like Michael Dukakis in the tank. Remember that?
Well, so anyway, I think that might be, you know, unless there's a reason you really don't want to, I think you ought to get somebody to train you on riding a horse. And then you can talk about gait and whatever.
Red light, light.
Running.
Yeah, I could talk about gait now, but yeah, right.
That's the only thing.
Well, I mean, so I can see it, right? And yeah, I can tell you a story about that. We don't have a lot of time.
On the poster.
I'll give you a story.
At the poster.
Poster.
So it probably is going to require peer review first.
Yep.
But you know, we have lemon laws now, right? I was
Yeah,
thinking
yeah,
about it. Ever since we first met, I'm like, if I'm selling a used car, I don't want to know what's wrong with it until it's gone. But we have lemon laws for that. And I'm, you know, probably, like I say, is there any opportunity for regulation if somebody buys a horse that dies when they could have known that it would? That seems like a liability issue.
Well, you know, that's a two-sided sword, right? So there are regulations passed by I'm trying to find a gentle way to say this. People who have limited understanding but are able to pass laws. So there are laws against breeding an animal with a genetic defect. And it's a good thing that that applies to non-human animals and not to humans. So how many people here know for sure that they're free of genetic defects? Notice my hand is not going up because I've been sequenced and I have some horrible things that I have in my genome. And under those European laws, if I were a domestic animal, I would be forbidden from breeding, right? So those are not good laws, right? So like, did somebody bought a lemon horse? And, you know, it's all about the contract between the horse breeder and the buyer. So if the buyer says, if this horse has, you know, a preventable disease, I want to be able to get, you know, compensation of some kind. And the only thing they could do that for now would be the diseases that are in the AQHA panel, right? If you lied to me about these genetic tests, I can sue you, right? And that does happen, right? So people fake the papers all the time and they lie about genetic test results.
So again, that's the peer review before you can get on the AQHS panel.
Yes, the AQHA panel has first got a scientific review and then the members vote on whether to accept that or not. Right, so yeah, it's a lift, but I think it's the path forward for us.
So, you know, you're really an advocate for the buyer. Are you, you know, and it seems as though you have begun to create, you know, some polls from the buyers. You know, is there, are you becoming the enemy of the sellers yet? And if so, can you leverage that so that you're really the hero of the buyers?
Well, so a couple of breeders have gone with an all clean breeding program by testing everything and getting rid of horses that were positive, and they're producing clean horses. Now, they're not currently getting a big premium for that, but I think after peer review, people are going to say, oh, these people got ahead, right? And fine. So I'd like to do some more of that with the breeding operations, just to give other people a chance to get ahead and show people that it can be done, right? It doesn't mean you have to eliminate horses that are positive. It means you have to do the breedings intelligently, so to reduce the incidence.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Will Couts. My company is Branding Titans. We are a digital marketing agency. So I want to set the stage for my questions. I have two. If you can imagine marketing as a dartboard, my questions are the bullseye. And when you clarify these questions for yourself, all of your content and all of the communications between you, your staff, your vendors, and your marketplace starts to flow in one subjective connection. Okay. So the first question is, why do you do what you do?
Well, that is a complicated question, right? So, you know, and it's sort of entangled with, but you're not a horse person. Why are you doing this? I was trained since 1976 on at taxpayer expense. I mean, society has invested a great deal of money in me. And I did train people, I did do original research. And I look at this opportunity and I said, you know, this is something that I could really do to justify the taxpayer money that is spent throwing me in a vat, right? And our focus, if you had to say, like, if the fairy godmother comes down and says, what's the segment you most want to influence? That would be equine veterinarians. Because as soon as they say, okay, in mass, the breeders are like, I guess so. And the horse owners are going to say, I told you so, right? And so that is our primary target. That's why the peer-reviewed publications are so important. They're not as far along as they could be because the patents are so expensive.
Okay, great. For the last 8 years, me asking that question, 100% of the time, we answer the question based on what we're doing for our potential consumer. So part two of the why question is, why do you do what you do for you? You got to leave them out of it.
Okay, leaving them out of it. Let's just get, you know, I am not government surplus to be put out on the loading dock and say, you know, thanks for what you did. right? I mean, everybody in this room has a purpose that they work for, that helps you get through the lousy days and the junk in your inbox and people screaming about money, right? And that purpose is scientific research. And I'll tell you that there is no greater pleasure that civilization affords than scientific discovery. It takes a very long time to be trained sufficiently. It takes a while to identify the right opportunity. But when you make an original discovery and you're the only person in the world that knows that, there's nothing like that.
Fantastic. Excuse me, fantastic. So going back to the dartboard, the bullseye is made up of what I call foundational statements. It's 3 statements, and we've all heard of 2 of them. And that's usually where we start, our vision statement and our mission statement. But the why statement actually fuels those 2.
Mm-hmm.
So congratulations, you just cracked the nut on mastering your marketing.
Well, thank you. And I'm really glad this is all being recorded because I'm like, I said, what? I said,
It's there.
You know your stuff. Good morning. My name is Marty McNabb. I'm from Think Tide Show and Tales. I'm passionate about building deeper connections, community, and legacy through the stories of the things that matter. He was a guest on my podcast, and I learned a lot about that, about your work there. I grew up with horses, spent the first 15 years of my life with them. And so grateful. Talk about them saving me or me saving them. Like it's a wonderful experience. So I have some horse people to connect you with. All these years later, I haven't ridden in probably 25, 30 years, but I definitely still have some connections there. But I wanted, another question was, in addition, is there other things that you test for in horses other than this muscle disease?
There will be. So one of the things that we're working on is what we call a discovery project. So when we first made these discoveries, I don't want to get too technical, the horse genome assembly, the model of horse genome was pretty bad. It's much improved now.
That's me. I'm so sorry.
Okay. And we were using software and basically manually screening gene lists. And so we could do maybe 5 genes on a first pass in a day. And now we are building an automated pipeline to do that. And we built the gene list. The gene list that we're looking at as candidate genes has over 1,000 genes on it. The one we did manually had about 100. So we are going to make additional discoveries. It is inevitable. So basically what you can think of is we're going to build a chip and we're going to test all these things in parallel. So we have the capacity to test not a single hypothesis, but like 1,000 hypotheses in parallel. And that will result in the discovery of new things to test for. We will patent those and we will just keep the patent portfolio rolling because you have 17 years for filing. Right. So, we don't want our patent portfolio to expire. We'll always be adding new tests to increase the value of the patent portfolio and to keep the patent protection. So not only do we have a plan in place, we have the gene list and we know some of the things we're looking for. If you want to talk about science, it's at the poster.
Thank you very much.
For not talking about science.
I love science.
All right, well, I've been asked to kind of close this out today, so I've got our final 2 questions. What's the one thing that this community can do for you today?
You do know somebody that knows something about horses, even if you haven't been in touch for a while. So shake the trees and say, there's this crazy guy that thinks he can genetically test for something that's wrong with a lot of horses. You want to talk to him, right? That's really what I want to do. Also, you can help me with LinkedIn. You can help me with green screen in Final Cut Pro. You can talk to me about the other things that I kind of need tenures for, but it's above their level. So it's more than one thing.
Thank you. And the New Mexico State question, red or green?
Today I would say green because if you get the Pozole Verde at Flying Star Cafe. It's a transcendent experience.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Let's do newbies. We did a